My friends, as I review the news, I get that same feeling that I got just a little while ago before things broke, that there's a storm brewing. I'm not saying that anything is imminent, but I'm looking at the pieces, who's meeting who, why they're meeting with each other, and what's going on, what was promised or said publicly, and it's ominous. It's really not good. Okay. At this point, just a little bit ago, Iran has closed its airspace, was reported, but then it was also unreported. Reports of Iran closing its airspace are currently false. While some flights to the region have been canceled, there's not a notice to air mission issued by the Iranian Civil Aviation Organization. And yet, when you look at the map, like everything's closed over Ukraine, everything's closed over, well, almost everything. They're on the periphery and a little bit down here, but it's just, there's not a lot. And we had some kind of indications that something was about to pop off, perhaps. We see news articles about how, and this just came out, about the Iranian president was reportedly injured in Israeli strikes. And we didn't know about this until just now. Here it is in the BBC. Iran's president was reportedly slightly injured during one of Israel's attack on Iran last month. Iran State Fars news agency close to the Revolutionary Guard says that on 16 June, 6 bombs targeted both access and entry points of the secret underground facility in Tehran, where he was attending an emergency meeting of the Supreme National Security Council. Like, that got very close. Like, it was enough that it injured him. The president said to have suffered leg injuries as he and others escaped through an emergency shaft. Apparently, the Israelis bombed it to such a degree that they couldn't go through normal directions. It has now emerged that the strikes on the fourth day of the war targeted a secret underground facility in Tehran where Iran's top leaders were at the time. The Supreme National Security Council, in Iran's top decision-making body, last week, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, not Khomeini. I mispronounced that before. I'm making it clear. They were after him as well. Ayatollah Khamenei was also the target, but they had lost track of him, and he was moved to a secret location. So bad things are brewing there with Iran and perhaps Israel. And at the same time, they have made some threats toward Europe, and Russia's kind of stirring the pot. What I'm about to show you is Russia stirring the pot in multiple fronts. And then I'm going to show you a bunch of bad leaders behaving badly. But I'm also going to show you, and wait till the end, I'm also going to show you some really good leaders doing some amazing things. So stick around to the end of this. Okay, Putin is considering nuclear use. He's saber-rattling again about nukes because he's running out of options, says the Telegraph. His army is stalled. Yeah, I mean, his army's making progress, but it's very little day over day. And they'll make, I think, a little bit of a breakthrough, but then they'll hit the next Ukrainian lines, and then they'll stall out again. Europe is rearming. France, and by the way, Europe wasn't rearming before Putin started doing this. France and the UK just now formed a joint nuclear deterrent. France and the UK are going to be the backbone of, after the war, having a force in Ukraine to be able to react to further Russian aggression. Finland and Sweden joined NATO. I mean, like, everything here went wrong for him. Now, Putin also lies about stuff fairly regularly. This is the anniversary, I think, of that historic discussion about how Ukraine and Russia are really one peoples. Remember that, like 3 years ago? Putin snubbed a delegation for disrespect to Russian border guard. What? Disrespect? Okay. In a newly released interview, Vladimir Putin recalled refusing to speak with a visiting U.S. delegation in St. Petersburg after one member rudely mistreated a Russian border guard. I'm pretty sure our State Department diplomats are going to not do that, but okay. He disrespects the state. Disrespecting him means disrespecting Russia. Okay, that's him trying to sound tough. I don't know that the event didn't happen, but it seems improbable that is what went down. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov are holding strategic talks in Beijing. What do you think is going to come of that? Especially after Wang Yi was just saying that we don't want to see Russia lose. Lavrov had a meeting with Wang Yi. Again, this is their second meeting in a week. They also met in Malaysia several days ago. After his visit to North Korea, Lavrov has arrived in Beijing, and they're having these talks. And that's on the heels of these two having talks with Lavrov and Kim, and they're trying to get either men to be either soldiers or workers in munitions factories or border guards or something along those lines to free up more soldiers. And so it's just nothing good's going to come of that. And meanwhile, the Russians are just acting badly as they generally act badly. So German sailors say that their yacht was harassed by a submarine near Kaliningrad. This was the end of June, and the reports just came out. While sailing through Russia's exclusive economic zone in the Black Sea near Kaliningrad, German travelers Gerd and Anki Shaken reported that their sailboat was approached and harassed by a submarine. Gerd attempted to contact the submarine by radio as it neared to within 1 nautical mile, but received no response. And so to avoid a collision, they turned their yacht, trying to pass behind the submarine. At that moment, the sub abruptly stopped. When the Shekens resumed their course, the submarine began to sail parallel to them and followed them for another 30 minutes before eventually turning away. That's got to be so eerie to be out in the middle of the ocean or out enough in the ocean that you're in, could be in trouble, and a sub is like trying to play chicken with you. Arriving in Klaipėda. Klaipėda is a port in the Baltic in Lithuania. A local sailor asked whether the Russians had been bothering them. Look, they understood it enough to know to even ask the question. It's ridiculous. The situation in the Baltic Sea can no longer be compared to real peacetime. Rather, these conditions are reminiscent of Cold War situation. Here's Klaipėda, and this is where they were going, and the Russians came out from here. So, internet was shut down 744 times in the first 11 days of July, affecting 79 out of 80 regions. So the question is why they're doing it. Like the commentary here from Igor Shushko was saying that this Kremlin testing and refining systems for total information blackout in case the Putin dictatorship faces serious risk of collapse. I'm not sure that that's what it is. It could very well be to keep drones from being able to coordinate or some other reason. I just don't know, but something weird is going on there. And then Russian forces are being forced to adapt by either building fortified structures or abandoning vulnerable airfields despite their logistical convenience. So after Spiderweb, which was 1.5 months ago, they're kind of paranoid. At the same time, these measures appear reactive and lack a coordinated approach. So the Russians have to back their bombers way up, and it gives it extra time, but it's not like they're not going to keep bombing. And remember, there was only like 60 today, so that means if you see 60 today and 60 tomorrow, the next day will be 300 or 500 or something like that. It might be 300 or 500 tomorrow for all we know. But yeah, they're saving up for a rainy day when they do that. I saw this commentary and I thought I ought to address it. Anyone who thinks that abandoning Ukraine to pivot to Asia is a viable strategy needs to resign. Now, that is American military doctrine, but it's not quite like you're saying here. It says Russia's inextricably dependent on North Korea and China. I think that that's correct. They are dependent, and one cannot peel Russia off them. I don't think that that's going to happen either. But the pivot is to focus on one threat because we can only address one theater at a time with our current configuration of our military. That's what the pivot is all about. It's not just about refocusing. Now, I do agree with this last line. Focus on sanctions, disrupting shipments, and arming Ukraine. That's the path to peace. Absolutely, that is the path to peace. Okay, so what will Trump do tomorrow? I posted this and I got some responses, 3,000 some odd responses saying, okay, so Trump's big announcement on Monday will be real good news for Ukraine. Only a quarter of you think so. Nothing to speak of, 43%. Not related to Ukraine at all, 8%. So about half of you said it's that. And another quarter said it's good for Putin and Russia. Well, wouldn't that be something? I don't think that that's what's going to happen. I think it'll have to do with weapons deliveries or something along those lines. And we'll see tomorrow. But if you want to suspend your belief until that happens, that's absolutely fair. Watch Trump's actions, not his words. I'm tired of seeing too much talk. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham saying again, Again and again, saying a record arms package for Ukraine is coming soon with a statement from Trump expected tomorrow. That's what I think it's going to be. But he talks about, and now he's talking about perhaps seizing assets or that kind of thing, selling massive arms to Ukraine. But he's been talking about this sanctions bill and sanctions bill and sanctions bill and sanctions bill, and we haven't actually seen it yet. And so I would say suspend your belief. Like, I don't believe you. Trust but verify. Okay, let's see if it's actually going to happen. Okay, next. With that, I read Barney Frank's book. Barney Frank was a Democrat congressman from Massachusetts who said something along the lines of, like, in politics, you don't get any credit if something breaks and you fix it before it broke. Like, you only get credit after the thing broke. So this is why you're finding the dysfunction that you're finding. Like, he's been talking about the sanctions bill ad nauseum, but he only gets credit if he can actually show, see, this is broken and now I fixed it. You don't get credit. It's a weird system, politics. Okay, now I'm going to show you 3 or 4 stories of just awesome leadership. Look at this. I don't know who the prime minister in Romania is. I know nothing about him. But along with his colleagues, he's seen stacking chairs and piling up cups, flyers, and plastic bottles in the Romanian parliament right after a meeting of the National Liberal Party. That's just awesome. Like, he's not too big for his britches. And then I saw this. Finnish President Stubb came in second place in a triathlon competition. Now, that's not like Putin, where nobody wants to actually do better than him. He'll go out in the ice hockey rink and he'll score 7 goals and 7 goals to 1 or something along those lines. It's not that. Listen to this, in which he participated incognito under the pseudonym of Ilta Sanomat. His name was announced after the finish line. He swam 750 meters, cycled 20 kilometers, and ran 5 kilometers in an hour and 4 minutes and 19 seconds. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Here's some other leadership that's not quite as good. The author of the bestseller, Go Where the Fear Is, was too afraid to go to Kyiv. He's a British business coach and motivational speaker. I don't know anything about him, but he had planned intensive personal transformation trainings in the Ukrainian capital. However, the event was postponed indefinitely after massive missile strikes. Go where their fear is. Well, got to kind of stay on brand. But this was awesome. This is just, this was on the BBC as it's a recounting of what happened in the early days of the war. So, quote, "We have only 15 minutes to leave." This is like day 1. Or day 2, something like that. "In 40 minutes, we'll be surrounded," Ukraine state security reportedly told the president at the beginning of the war, recalls David Arkihama, leader of the majority in Ukraine's parliament. After that, Zelensky gathered his team and said, "Everyone has a family. I won't judge anyone who wants to leave. Do it now." Ukrainian president also added, "If we're not here, the people will stop fighting." And he made a choice between life and death. Now, that's right, because in the leadership literature, that's called sense making. What did the people do? Well, like, the Russians have invaded. What do we do? Do we stay? Do we flee? Do we fight? What do we do? And they're handing out weapons. And Zelensky came out and he was showing on the very famous cell phone video where he's like, "I'm here. The prime minister's here. The people are here. We're here in Kyiv." And right. Yeah, that helped tremendously. In a segment of an interview with the BBC, he recalls the first days of the war in late February 2022. The State Protection Service's warning, "We'll be surrounded in 40 minutes," did not refer to the entire city being captured, but to the government district or area where Zelensky and his team were located. According to Ukrainian intelligence and police reports, by February 24th to 25th, the elite Russian sabotage units had already infiltrated Kyiv with the goal of storming the government quarter, spreading chaos, assassinating officials, and taking over the president's office. Civil defense was organized. Russia's main forces failed to launch a full assault on Kyiv. That included organized resistance around Bucha and Irpin and neutralized the Hostomel airport, disrupting Russia's plans to bring reinforcements. Okay, yeah, and so what actually happened there was, like, the people of Ukraine saw we're like, I need a ride, I need weapons, not a ride, right? So, like, and so with that, the people came out and put cars out in the street and blocked the streets and did everything that they could to make it rough for the Russians to get into there on the way. And they were blowing bridges and things like that. All right, I'll leave you with this last thought. Great man is hard on himself. A weak man is hard on others. Yeah, That's the way the world works. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.